So while the predefined zones will probably be more than enough for most users, it can be helpful to define your own zones that are more descriptive of their function. For instance, you might want to create a zone for your web server called public web. However, you might want to have another zone configured for the DNS service you provide on your private network. You might want a zone called private DNS for that. So when adding a zone, you must add it to the permanent firewall configuration. You can then reload to bring the configuration into your running session. For instance, we could create the two zones we discussed, and I'll show you the command for those. For the first one, it's firewall-cmd permanent new zone equals public web. Okay, that was successful. Then we're going to do the same, and this time we're going to call it private DNS. Okay, and you can verify that these are present in your permanent configuration by typing firewall-cmd permanent get zones, and as you can see, there's public web right here and there's private DNS here. And as we said before, these won't be available in the current instance of the firewall yet. So in order to do that, we'll do firewall-cmd get zones and we're gonna do the firewall reload, firewall-cmd reload, misspell reload, and it was successful. And then we get the get zones command again, and as you can see, now we can see this private DNS and public web in there. And now what you can do is you can begin assigning the appropriate services and ports to your zones. It's usually a good idea to adjust the active instance and then transfer those changes to the permanent configuration after testing. For instance, for the public web zone, you might want to add the SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS service. And we're going to do it here. Firewall-cmd zone equals public web add service equals SSH. It's done. Next one, I'm just going to do an arrow up, and here I'm going to type HTTP, and then one more time I'll do up arrow and HTTPS. Okay, and then I'm going to list them all. List-all. And these are all of our services that are listed here. And just like that, we can also add the DNS service to our private DNS zone. In order to do that, we'll type firewall-cmd zone equals private DNS add service equals DNS, and then you're going to list them all. List all. Okay, and this is going to list the DNS service that we just configured. And now we can change our interfaces over to these zones to test them out. So firewall dash cmd dash zone equals public web dash change dash interface equals enp0s3 we'll use for this one. The interface under control of network manager, setting zone to public. Okay, so we'll disable systemctl okay, so that was successful. And the next one we're gonna do for our private DNS, and it's going to be on enp0s8, and we're going to change this to private DNS. Okay, that was successful. So at this point you have the opportunity to test your configuration. If these values work for you, you will want to add the same rules to the permanent configuration. And you can do that by reapplying the rules with the permanent flag. Okay, the way we do this is firewall dash cmd dash zone equals public web dash permanent dash add dash service equals SSH. Then I'm going to up arrow and change this to HTTP. Then again change this to HTTPS, and then change this one to DNS, and at the same time from public web to private DNS. So after permanently applying these rules, you can restart your network and reload your firewall service. So that'll be systemctl restart network. Okay, so our restarting the network is failing, so I'll go ahead and reboot it. You can look at actually systemctl status network service, this command, see if it gives us any meaningful information. Failure to start LSB, bring up or down. I've seen this before. It gets fixed by rebooting the machine, so we're going to do that. So now we're going to validate the current zones are assigned, and for that the command is firewall dash cmd dash get dash active zones, and our home and interface enp0s3 are assigned. We should have a second interface also. So after my reboot, one of the interfaces got turned off, so that's why it wasn't showing up, but now it is showing up. So private DNS on enp0s8, and the home interface is enp0s3, which is also the public interface that we configured. And now we're gonna validate that appropriate services are available for both of the zones. So we'll type in firewall dash cmd dash dash zone equals public web dash dash list dash services SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. And then we're going to do the same, except we're going to change this to private DNS, and that's DNS. So now you have successfully set up your own zones. If you want to make one of these zones the default for the other interface, remember to configure that the behavior with the dash dash default dash zone equals parameter. And you can do that by typing firewall dash cmd dash dash set dash default zone equals public web. That's successful.